Ott, the Gentle Giant. Ott was raised by John Eater at Orville, Washington. He was the product of a Brahma bull and a Hereford cow. Ott was branded on the hip with the number 0. He made his first appearance as a 2-year-old in 1948. By the early 50s, Ott was well known in the Northwest. He performed at rodeos big and small and developed a reputation for being unrideable. From 1948 until 1960, there were no qualified rides on Ott. There was 1 or 2 times he did not perform his usual style by any means. He jumped from the chute like a fat old cow, hopped around a bit, and stopped. But the re-ride was a very different story. It usually was a 2 or 3 jump ride. One of the times he did not buck his usual style was at Woodinville, Washington with Carl Doring. Carl had never seen Ott before that day. A re-ride was arranged and Ott was back in the chute. While Carl was getting his bull rope set for another try, several bull riders were telling him not to expect this bull to buck like that again. If Ott bucked like he should, he was sure enough hard to top. This time, Ott came out of the chute hard and went into a spin, throwing Carl to the ground and knocking the wind out of him. That was the first time Carl was seen at a pro rodeo in that part of the country. He went on to be a very famous and well-liked rodeo clown, but Ott may have hindered his bull riding interest. Ott never got credit for the consecutive number of buck-offs he had. One of the cowboys that he brought down was the very famous Harry Tompkins. In 2003, I asked Harry if he remembered being on Ott at Topnish in the 1950s. He remembered flying into the rodeo with Jim Shoulders. When Harry asked what bull he had, someone pointed to the bull laying down with all the kids sitting on him. After Ott bucked him off, Harry came back behind the bucking chutes and told Leo Moomaw, "That's the best bull I've ever been on." What he was referring to was the fact that Ott had bucked him off by throwing Harry over his head, where Harry landed on his feet right in front of Ott's face. Ott calmly dropped his head, ducked to the right, and went on down the arena like it was all in a day's work. In time, Ott gained a lot of attention, not so much for his ability to buck, but for the fact that he was broke to lead and very gentle. In the summer of 1955 or 56, the bucking bulls were turned loose on some rangeland to rest between rodeos. While Leo was out checking the bulls, he found several injured. Upon examination of the area, it became apparent that there had been a fight. A short distance away, a bull was found laying down and apparently unable to move his back legs. Leo rode home and got some help. The bull was transported to Leo's barn where he could be given special care, but he did not survive his internal injuries. Ott stood about the height of a 14-hand horse and weighed in around 1,850 pounds. He had a horn spread of about 48 inches, with horns like baseball bats. Leo came to the conclusion that Ott was the culprit. Ott went into isolation. He was put in a pole corral attached to Leo's barn. After a while, he began to get bored, and he would either jump out or put his head against the poles and push till something broke. Ott escaped several times. After a particularly long chase where Leo and son Rich had to rope him to get him back to the corral, Leo decided to curtail his roaming. A 1-inch manila rope about 100 feet long was placed around his horns. This allowed him to go into the barn to eat or go out into the corral to drink or walk around. Ott was only untied to go to rodeos. To prevent him from fighting, he was separated from the other bulls. Sometimes he was with the horses, other times he was kept with the calves or steers. A chain was placed around his horn, and in a short time, Ott could easily be led around. He was led into the bucking chutes during the rodeo. After he bucked, bullfighters liked to catch him and lead him out of the arena. He became one of the most pampered bucking animals in the rodeo business. In 1960, Leo sold his interest in the rodeo outfit to his partner, Joe Kelsey. Joe kept Ott at his home in Tonasket. Joe turned Ott loose in his arena, which was made of poles about 6 feet high. Ott had a chain around his horns, which was tied to a front leg, loose enough to allow him to move around and lay down comfortably. The chain was set so he could not get his head high enough to jump. To Joe's surprise, Ott, with his head tied down to a front foot, was still able to jump a 6-foot fence without breaking a pole. This shows how athletic he was for an 1,800-pound bull. Ott loved to have his back scratched and would allow people to sit on his back while he was laying down. There were pictures of small children holding him while he ate grass. In the arena, the bullfighters would catch him as soon as the rider was off his back. Then one of them would unflank him and lead him out of the arena. Ott was really smart about bucking. He must have been able to sense a rider's confidence. A local bull rider drew him an Omac one year, and anyone watching could tell that he was very nervous or very scared. When the rider was ready, he nodded for the gate. Ott turned out and made a slow, easy jump and then turned back. The rider fell forward onto Ott's head. Ott stopped while the rider pushed himself back into position and then made a jump to his left hard enough to throw the rider off. Then he waited for the bullfighters to unwrap the chain from his horns and lead him from the arena. When Ott drew a good rider, he would leave the chute hard. About the second or third jump, he would turn back into a spin. Every jump, he would increase the speed and the power until the rider was in the dirt. Darrell Brown said he felt easy to ride, and then suddenly he was gone.